Hello, my name is Damon Fairchild. Welcome to my analysis and synthesis of EdTech 522 online teaching for adult learners. During this presentation, I will discuss the theory behind adult online education as well as the practices. And when it comes to the theory related to adult education in general, not just specifically online adult education, we have to consider the term andragogy. Andragogy sounds an awful lot like another term that you may be familiar with, which is pedagogy. Pedagogy refers specifically to the education or learning of children, whereas andragogy refers more specifically to the education of adults. And when we think of adult learning, one of the names that stands out more prominently in the history of andragogy is Malcolm Knowles. In fact, he presented the notion that adult learning should be more student-centered rather than teacher-centered. In other words, he assumed that the adult learners were more self-directed and that the teacher should plan lessons to be more of a facilitator of discovery learning rather than a transmitter of information. The history of the term actually really goes back to the 1800s when Alexander Knapp developed the term, but it didn't become well known until the 20th century when Malcolm Knowles presented his 6 assumptions of adult learning. And while there are some criticisms of the following assumptions, they're generally accepted as a strong base for understanding effective adult learning. The first assumption is self-concept. In other words, as a person matures, they become less dependent and more self-directed in their efforts to gain an education. The second is experience. Again, as a person matures, their experiences become a source of understanding and comprehension, or they're able to better relate their life lessons and the experiences that they've had throughout their life to the coursework that they may be learning. The third is a readiness to learn. Of course, the relevance of a topic can definitely be a motivating factor for adult learners much more than it would for a child learner. The fourth is orientation to learn. As a person matures, they become more likely to learn based on an understanding that the new knowledge will benefit them in some way, whether it be emotionally or financially. They see an end result and a reason for what they're learning. The fifth is a motivation to learn. As a person matures, they feel outside pressure, but also an internal pressure for self-esteem and accomplishment. The sixth and final is that as a person matures, they understand why a topic or certain knowledge is essential to them, why it is that they have to have this information in order to reach the goals that they may have set for themselves in the short term or in the long term. Knowles' theory not only had an application in the traditional classroom, but has, of course, a direct correlation to what we're doing in this and others are doing in online courses around the world. In addition to online courses, it continues to have an influence and be an important factor in planning hybrid and blended courses, both of which we have done an in-depth study during this course. One of the things we learned about the two different types of online courses, strictly online and hybrid or blended courses, is that they do have some similar benefits. One of those benefits is flexibility in schedule. You're able to do your work when it is most convenient for you. In addition to that, they allow for some self-direction. You're able to guide yourself through the course and monitor your own progress. Again, being able to learn at the pace typically and the efficiency that you would prefer or a learner would prefer to learn at. Because a hybrid course not only has online learning but also classroom learning, there is a potential for a couple of other additional benefits. First would be face-to-face interaction with your peers and your instructors. You have a greater sense of community in some of those cases when you're able to see them more often than you would online. That causes you also to end up having some interpersonal connections that, again, you may not have otherwise been able to accomplish depending on the limitations of your online class and the classmate interaction. Being in a classroom occasionally also allows for some more spontaneous feedback from a professor that you may not have otherwise been able to achieve, and from your classmates as well. Throughout the term, we have been introduced to a number of different tools that we can use to enhance the quality of the education that we provide. Blogs such as WordPress or Blogger that are free to students can be very beneficial for sharing of information and ideas. Social media websites such as Facebook that students are accustomed to using, or even if they're not, can be introduced to and find a new way to interact with their peers. Skype is a great tool for having some visual contact with your classmates, in addition to Google Documents, which has we've found to be very useful in working together on projects and sharing information and adding information, especially when the team is working on different time schedules. Prezi is a great presentation software that we use to add an interesting flair to our assignments, with a minor drawback that you might get a little bit dizzy while you're watching it. Adobe Connect allowed us to add video to our presentations, which can be very beneficial to your students as they can connect with you visually and see your face and feel more connected to you in that sense. We were also able to analyze and in fact work with a number of course management systems. We worked specifically with Moodle. Moodle is a powerful tool that allows an instructor a variety of ways to organize classes to meet their own as well as their students' needs. It was quite labor intensive, but well worth the work to learn how to design an effective online course for your students. Another type of course management system would be Blackboard, that we didn't work specifically with, but a number of people in our class have used it in the past, so it's definitely worth noting. And in conclusion, an understanding and practice of principles of adult learning and effective online tools and techniques, as well as systems for best managing our courses, is essential to our, but more importantly, our students' success in the future.